They fixed Modern! Kind of. What's up, guys? Doomwake here, and welcome to another video on the channel. Got a little bit something special here today, if it wasn't already hinted at in the title. But before we continue, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and please be sure to let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the video. So, for those of you who didn't see, it happened! It's so funny when I was actually working today and I had just scrolling through Twitter a little bit, and I came across the announcement, and I had to log out of my phones and kind of do some jumping around my room and stuff. I was so unbelievably excited that they actually made this announcement, and this was pretty they didn't announce this. It was unannounced, completely just out of the blue. They're like, you know what? It's it. We're a They've heard a lot of complaints, and we'll kind of go over what the announcement and the reasons behind it. But here's where this is it. Lurrus is banned. Pioneer and Modern. Get out of here. We're not going to talk about Pauper. I haven't played a single game of Pauper in over 3 years. So we're just going to be focusing on Modern, a little bit of Pioneer. But Lurrus, gone. No more. Thank the Lord. But yeah, we're going to be talking about, just going to go over their reasoning for it, what I think will be good moving forward, and then some potential... I don't want to try and be a Debbie Downer about this, but I think there might still be a little bit of a problem, but we'll talk about that in a second. So first and foremost, let's kind of go through the announcement here. Pioneer, Lurrus is banned. Modern, Lurrus is banned. So here's the reasoning why. So for Modern, since the release of Modern Horizons 2, Modern has enjoyed a period of experimentation and exploration, which I agree with. There was a really long period of time, probably for about 4 or 5 months after MH2 came, maybe a little bit less than that, like 4 months, 3 months, when MH2 came out, where people were trying some new stuff, and remember the first week of Modern Horizons 2 when Asmo was a thing. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely a kind of a honeymoon period for MH2, which is as to be expected for new sets. Despite that, Lurrus has remained a ubiquitous presence in the format across multiple archetypes. True. Lurrus's play rate, this is where they get into some numbers. 31% in Magic Online League decks that started with 4 wins points to a card that is contributing to the homogenization of modern play experience. There's not a significant enough deck building cost to incorporate it into a wide variety of strategies. Kind of, if you watched my video from last week, the exact points that I was saying. It's just, it's too free to put into your deck because it's essentially the way that you should be building your modern decks anyways, with all these cheap and efficient cards, so there's not really a deck building cost. As is often the case in larger, non-rotating formats, there are already strong incentives to include as many cheap and efficient cards as possible, due to format speed and a variety of other pressures. Lurrus compounds those incentives by providing a powerful additional resource that helps to alleviate the weakness of filling your deck with cheaper and often less impactful cards as games go on. For too many archetypes, Lurrus isn't a trade-off, but purely additive. Again, completely agree. And they say, due to play data, community feedback, and a desire to keep as a diverse range of card options as possible available to players in Modern, Lurrus of the Dream Den is banned in Modern. So, the first impression is that, obviously the most played deck over the past couple of months has been Grixis Death Shadow. People have been talking about the death of Grixis Death Shadow. I don't really think that that's going to be the case. The strategy of discard spells, Death Shadow, Kroxa, Ragavan, Channeler, all that stuff is still really good. The only thing that you lost was your inevitability, right? So if the games go long and you just try to play this resource management type of game, Lurrus was just kind of your get out of jail free card, and you don't have access to that anymore. So the way that people are going to build Grixis Shadow moving forward is they're going to be incorporating some more sources of card advantage. Like, you're going to see probably more Kolaghan's commands. You might even see Seasoned Pyromancer, potentially, now that Lurrus is no longer in the format, just a way to kind of gas back up a little bit, and you have reasons to play 3-drops now. Maybe Liliana the Veil, maybe Last Hope, not really sure on those. Potentially Street Wraith, and then I also saw Aspiring Spike playing with Murktide Region in Shadow earlier today. So those are some options that you now have that you previously didn't have, because Lurrus was putting a constraint on your deck building. Next deck we're going to go over is Hammer Time. Hammer Time is going to still be a really good deck. The only difference is, again, same thing, inevitability. All these decks are still going to be powerful. They're just not going to have that free inevitability that help them get, really grind out longer games. And that's definitely a resource that they no longer have, but they can maybe build their deck a little bit more aggressively to try and take take the game, end the game in a shorter time window so that the games don't go into those later stages of the game where Lurrus normally took over. So maybe a little bit, just essentially building your deck a little bit more aggressively. As far as hammer time goes, look for Cauldron Complete, look for Nettle Cyst. Those are like the two big winners for hammer time specifically. As far as, the other decks in the format, obviously Amulet didn't get touched. And Amulet's still going to be a very good deck. Still just a really powerful strategy. Tron, Belcher, all those decks are going to be pretty good. The one thing that I will say, Yorion did not get touched. Now, I understand there, if we go back down, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll go to Pioneer in a second, but it says, while Lurrus's presence in Modern and Pioneer are large enough for us to act today, the rest of the companions are seeing a play rate that is in line with a diverse and healthy metagame, which I kind of understand, but I think the reason that Yorion is not as played as it probably would normally be is because Lurrus was everywhere. Now that there's not another option, I am a little bit skeptical of the fact that Yorion may be too dominant, quote-unquote. Again, not 100% sure. Let me know in the comments if you feel the same way. But it's hard for me to imagine, given how Lurrus has warped our ideas and concepts around deck building over the past 2 years, that people who really want access to that additional resource aren't just going to go to Yorion. Now, I think the other companions that see play, like Kahira, Jegantha, and Obosh are kind of the three that come to mind. They don't provide you as much of an advantage that Lurrus and Yorion do, so I don't think they're as toxic as Lurrus and Yorion are. But, I'm really interested to see how Yorion adapts to these changes and if there's a lot more Yorion decks that pick up. But yeah, again, big winners for sure. The Hammer Time 3-mana cards. I think Shadow's going to be built a little bit differently, but I think all these decks are still going to be very good. And then obviously, we can have the conversation about Jund with Liliana the Veil, Bloodbraid Elf, Pyromancer, all these cards kind of unlocked or unbanned, as it were, because Lurrus just put such a stranglehold on what you could and couldn't play in terms of deck building. So, maybe those cards get a little bit more powerful. I'm still a little skeptical of playing, Boomer Jund in 2022, but maybe the additions of Ragavan and Ren and 6 over the past couple of years have really potentially given that deck a new angle of attack, maybe push it a little bit farther. But yeah, overall thoughts, really, really good. Deck building, we've kind of been ingrained over the past couple of years with companions, specifically Lurrus, because of just how free it is. And there would just be constant situations of me, like, looking at a deck list, and it's just, I want to play, like, a Seasoned Pyromancer or two, or, like, a Jace, or a Liliana, this random free value cards that, not free, but these random value cards that I just want to put into my deck. And then you just look at your deck list, and you're like, I can't justify this because Lurrus is a card. I can't justify putting one or two sweet cards in my deck because Lurrus exists. So really, really positive change, and I think that the format's going to be very, very healthy, at least in terms of, getting rid of Lurrus. I'm really excited for the format, and I'm really excited to keep, maybe go back to some modern content. So now let's talk about Pioneer. So Pioneer says, while considerably less dominant in Pioneer today, 20% in Magic Online League decks that started with 4 wins, we expect that Lurrus's metagame share will only grow as Pioneer's card pool expands, which I kind of understand that. That makes a lot of sense. Our philosophy for Pioneer is to create the most compelling sandbox built from recent standard formats. As Pioneer continues to grow over time, that incentive of non-rotating formats to pick and choose the most efficient cards from each release will become more pronounced, and Lurrus will only serve to accelerate that process. In the interest of preserving the diversity that Pioneer is enjoying rather than waiting for the critical mass, it is banned in Pioneer. Now, my exposure to Pioneer hasn't been as much because it's more recent. I've only been really getting into Pioneer over the past month or so. Lurrus, to me, in Pioneer doesn't feel oppressive or overpowered, and I think part of that is to do with the fact that there's no Mishra's Bauble, so it's not just this free source of insane card. You're just getting a free card every turn. The card, you're a little bit more restricted as to what you have access to in Pioneer. I guess when you combine it with something like, Experimental Synthesizer, maybe it can indirectly get you an extra card, but there's a little bit more work involved in that. So I understand they're more so just like, it's more of a preemptive ban than anything, and I think part of the reason why they wanted to do it in Pioneer is remember this, the newer sets that they introduce into the format have a much greater impact on Pioneer than they do in Modern, for the most part, because the card pool is a little bit smaller. So I think Luris has really put a hamper on what they can and can't print into Pioneer over the past couple of years, because if they print something, I'm just going to use an example, Mishra's Bauble. I don't know why they would ever reprint it, but if they printed Mishra's Bauble into Pioneer, Luris would be much more of a problem than it is currently. So I think what they're doing is they're more so just giving themselves the freedom, or in terms of the design space and what they can and can't do, because I really think it frees up some designs for 1 and 2 mana permanents into the format, and again, they're more likely to see play in Pioneer than they would elsewhere. As far as decks that Luris is played in Pioneer right now, like, I've been playing a little bit of the Boros Hotshot deck. It's good in that deck, but it doesn't come up that often. The Anvil deck, I played a couple leagues with that Rakdos Anvil deck. It's very, very good in that deck and a key centerpiece, really important part of that deck. So, I don't know if that deck will cease to exist, or maybe there's a different version of that deck. The Burn decks play Luris, but again, it's not like a center point, a focal point of their archetype per se. It comes up in some games, but not all the time. You don't really have something like Grixis Shadow, where Luris comes up almost every game in Grixis Shadow. You don't have that in Pioneer. It's more of just kind of an afterthought. But, it is a powerful card, and I understand, why they kind of maybe want to nip it a little bit before it becomes a problem, then have this conversation for 5 months down the road after it's dominating Pioneer because they printed something in the next set. Then they might as well just get rid of it now. And like I said, I don't know if it's necessarily needed in Pioneer, but it's not. It kind of serves a similar role in the sense of like the deck building philosophy in Pioneer, so I understand it. But again, let me know in the comments, do you guys like the Pioneer bans? And because again, I haven't played as much Pioneer, but I've been getting into it, but it only recently started. So let me know what you thought of the Pioneer bans. But in closing, that was, I want to keep this video a little bit short. We're at, I think, about 15 minutes now, or maybe a little bit less. But in closing, really, really, really excited to start playing Modern again. It feels like Modern's been unlocked for me. It's a lot when the card, Luris, the card in question is so good, and it really, you have to ask yourself why you aren't playing Luris. And when you have to ask that question, I don't really think it really belongs in that format. It really, just like they said, homogenizes and makes every game feel the same. And I really am, obviously, I'm for the ban. I was, if you saw the video last week, that was one of my bans. Going back to the Yorion existing, Colossus Hammer existing, I want to see how the format looks without Luris, because I think it's going to look a lot different, and I am very excited to get back into Modern. So again, please let me know your thoughts on this ban announcement. What did you think of it? Do you think the format's going to get a lot better? Is there anything that you wanted to see banned that maybe didn't get banned? Again, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.